Sri Krishna says, "Those who are free from the propensity for fault finding, who have complete faith in me, and who always abide by my teachings to perform Nishkam Karma Yoga, are liberated from the bondage of fruitive
Shraddha is one of
action."
the first requirements. Shraddha, Veera, Smriti, Samadhi, Pragnya, Purvaka Itaresham. People who are not yet into a Sampragnata Samadhi, how can we come into it? We are not born into these states. So Patanjali said, through Shraddha, through Virya, through courage, through energy, and memory. Smriti, not just memory, but also that awareness, the double edged arrow. Now, Shankaracharya has spoken of Shraddha as this: it is strong faith in the words of the Guru and scripture. This is how he describes Shraddha. This word has been used by Krishna in this particular verse, Shraddhavanto. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who belongs to the Bhakti tradition, has said that the word Shraddha means strong faith in God and Guru, even though we may not comprehend their message at present. Now, see, faith as a word has again, it becomes distorted because it goes into blind faith. See, you're born into a Hindu family, you're born into a Christian family, and when you're born, you are made to follow a certain religion. You're told this is God, this is what you follow. If you follow this, everything will be right for you. This is how we all grew up, isn't it? As children, this is what our parents told us. But what kind of faith is this? Something which comes from Osho. This is something which is coming from the outside world to you. The outside world, whether it's parents, it's our teachers, moral science classes that we attended in school or whatever, but they are giving certain beliefs to us and we are forming certain impressions on that. We have started believing something which has come from the outside. Okay? This is not something which is our own inner experience. Remember that, okay? So when something is like that, then it becomes blind faith because you don't really have any experience of this. You don't have an experience. You have never even tried to explore and understand what God is. Does it work? Does it not work? So, but we believe that no, this is it and just follow it. So anybody who is believing like that, inside him, he's really hiding a doubt, and his doubt can be for people who are, say, I'm not talking about children, but people who are so so rooted into that kind of belief system, they don't even have the courage to doubt. They're just taking it that it is like this, it has been said, and so I will follow. This is also one perspective on this. Your faith can be so blind that you don't have the courage to doubt. You have never looked deep within and seen if it really happens. See, Osho gives a very nice example. People say soul is eternal, soul never dies. On the other hand, when they are confronted by death, they are so afraid. So he says, what kind of faith is this? What kind of belief is this? This is your belief. If you say soul is eternal, it will never die, and tomorrow you're faced with death, why are you afraid? You should welcome it. Like we spoke of Socrates' example. We've spoken about Socrates' example. He's not worried. He's like, if it is eternal, what is the problem? If I'm going to perish, then also no problem. This man has managed to come into an equilibrium, a state of equanimity. Okay, he's not coming from a place of blind faith. So this is the first thing. Let's look at, what is this person doing? He's suppressing a certain doubt. Whether he's aware of it or not, he's suppressing a doubt and clinging on to his belief, to the belief. So there is this story, very nice story of Vivekananda. So, Rabindranath's grandfather is Debendranath, Maharishi Debendranath, and he's supposed to be a very a man who's into penance and spiritually evolved. So they hear in his village that Maharishi Debendranath is coming, and he is in the boat in the river. He's doing spiritual penance. So Vivekananda gets this news in the night. His friend tells him. And the moment Vivekananda hears, he says, let's go meet him. He tells his friend. So his friend says, we'll go tomorrow morning. So Vivekananda, he has no patience to wait. He jumps into the river. He swims across the river, reaches the boat, gets onto the boat. He's wet, he's soaked, and he sees Maharishi there. He walks up to him, holds him by his collar, and says, "Does God exist?" So Maharishi is a little flabbergasted. He's just looking at him, saying, "What is wrong with this guy?" He says, "You have just," he says, "Sit down, man. Get your breath. You have just swum across. You're wet." And this is no way to find out about God. And sit down, wait. So Vivekananda just looks at him and asks him, does God exist? But this is the Maharishi again tells him, you sit down and then we can talk. After he asks him to relax. So Vivekananda leaves him and jumps back into the river and begins to swim. So Maharishi runs after and he says, what happened? Why are you going? Let's talk. So Vivekananda says that I got my answer already. So he says, why should a man like you who has attained God be concerned that I have come in the middle of the night and I'm wet? So he says, your hesitation gives me all the answer. And he goes away. Now, this is, Osho has quoted this example and he says, Maharishi somewhere had a doubt somewhere deep within him. He was a believer. He was a believer, but within him, he had a doubt that was housing. Now, on another occasion, what happens is that Ramakrishna comes to the village. Now, Ramakrishna is there, people are surrounding him, and Vivekananda hears about him, cuts across the crowd, goes up to Ramakrishna, faces him and says, tell me, does God exist? So Ramakrishna looks straight at him in his eyes and he says, do you want to know? Now this puts him off balance. Vivekananda hadn't expected this kind of answer. So, he puts him in a little bit of, because he says, do you really want to know? And he does not give him any direct answer. So he creates a little problem for Vivekananda. What Osho says is that you have to see Ramakrishna's words are arising from a place of deep trust, from a place of knowing. There is no doubt in him. There is nothing. It's an absolute knowing. There's a wholehearted knowing of God. There is no conflict within him. So trust means there is no conflict within you. Trust means that all doubts have evaporated. There is no doubt. There is nothing. Whatever is right. You know it. You know it by a personal experience, by an encounter. Okay. So this was the Ramakrishna story. And so what about doubt? Now we have spoken about skeptic and suspicious. I spoke about this in the Yoga Sutra talk also. So what is a skeptic? So there is a person who says, you hear about phenomena and the person says, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. This is a good place to be in because a skeptic is not a believer, not a disbeliever. He simply is empty. He says, I don't know, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't happen, maybe there's a God, maybe there's no God, but his hands are empty. There is a suspicious person who says, you tell him about a certain experience in yoga, you tell him about an experience of God, and he says, what nonsense, this is rubbish, this does not happen. Cut. He's closed and locked his gates. A believer and a disbeliever can both fall in the suspicious category. So Osho has explained it like this. He says, believers, disbelievers, they are carrying colored stones in their hands and they are mistaking it for diamonds. Whereas the one who is like a skeptic is just empty-handed. He is willing to explore. He is willing to search for the real diamonds. But if you are confusing the colored stones for diamonds, you will not even begin your search. So you are locked. That is why Sadhguru says, you are locking the gates. Don't be suspicious. It is better to be a skeptic. It is always good to keep that I don't know window open. To be too identified with I know and be so overpowered with this, your growth will get limited. He says that I don't know is a huge possibility because how much can you know? You can only know so much. What you don't know is limitless. Lead you to trust. Belief can never lead you to trust. So a skeptic can doubt, which is okay, which is good because he'll say, I know, maybe. He's sitting in that maybe zone, in that twilight zone. We spoke in Yoga Sutras about, the ignorant one, the person who is totally blind. Yoga is not for him because he has made decisions about things that he doesn't know. He has concluded this is how it should be. This is the four corners. If it doesn't fit in, what you're saying is nonsense. So he has made conclusions about things that he does not know. And so this is in Osho's words, belief is not worth a penny, but it is difficult to put a price on trust. Now, let's look at this. What is the opposite of trust? Is it doubt? The opposite of trust is belief. This is all from Osho. Opposite of trust is belief, because belief means gates are locked. Trust is an openness. Trust is receptivity. Where does belief come from? It comes from the outside world, from external sources, from impressions. Where does trust come from? Trust is born within you. So you can go back to chapter 11 of Paramhansa Yogananda's book. You have all read that. He is challenged on his faith. You call it faith, you call it belief, but for him, it is his trust. He's not challenged on a person who believes and disbelieves. Do you think he can accept such a challenge? Where his brother says, prove it to me that there is a God and these three things should happen. If it doesn't happen, you will drop all this. And only someone like Paramhansa Yogananda, who has that trust, can take up this challenge. Can any of us take up this challenge as believers or disbelievers? It's so hard. We will somewhere within us, we may have that glimmer of doubt. What if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't? Look within yourself to see, are you in a place of belief, or are you coming from a place of trust? Can you completely surrender? If you're asked to jump into the well, will you jump into the well because it's Krishna who's asking you to jump? Do you have that level of trust within you? So where does trust come from? It comes from an inner experience of God. How did this trust build in Paramhansa Yogananda? Even in that chapter 11, he says, the moment he asked me, I remembered all those images, the Devi appearing, he healing, all of those things came back. And he knew, because he had an encounter with the divine. Only when you have had an encounter with the divine, in whichever way, you have experienced your Guru's presence, you have experienced grace, only then trust happens. Trust is like a seed breaks within you. After that, you are never the same. You know that it exists. There is a knowing, not knowledge, not information, not coming from others. It comes from within you. What is more alive, belief or trust? Trust is more alive. That we all agree on. Then, is an atheist a non-believer? So an atheist says God does not exist. His belief is just negative, but it's like he's standing upside down on the belief system. Basically, he is also believing something that he does not know. We spoke last time, maybe God exists in the places that he has not searched. How could he have searched the whole universe? Right? An atheist is saying God doesn't exist. What about the places where he has not searched? God could exist there, isn't it? So, believers and disbelievers want to prove. Those who trust don't care about proof. You have to understand this, and we'll go deeper into it. So believers and disbelievers, they're all about logic. But the one who trusts is about love. He's about love. He's about a quality of the heart. And I think chapter 11 of Autobiography of a Yogi is a beautiful example on that. When you experience logic is not enough. Trust is not going to rise from logic. Trust is like the end of logic. When your logic is exhausted, when you feel completely helpless, that, everything I checked, this, that, when you come to that point of exhaustion, trust will rise only then. What creates trust? It has to be a personal encounter. In my own experience, trust is not blind. This is something. So when people say blind faith, please understand, blind faith is the same as belief or disbelief. Trust is never blind, because trust is based on a personal encounter. Other people may think you are blind because knowing within you, you have felt, you have experienced. Your experience becomes more valuable than whatever the world says. Correct? So it is the only belief which is blind. Trust is never blind. Let's look at this. Discernment, Viveka. We speak, Viveka is very important. Viveka Khyati. We spoke of Viveka Khyati and Yoga Sutras also. Without Viveka, without clear understanding, it's very difficult to move on the path of yoga. Now, we also spoke about how intellect is a knife. Discernment is the intellect, the using of the intellect to slice right, wrong, works, doesn't work, that kind of thing. So let's look at each one of them. What does discernment do? Discernment inquires, it thinks, it concludes. This is how discernment works. This is how our intellect will work. Trust only surrenders. Trust does not sit and do all this. Discernment depends upon the individual. My intellect has to be used. Trust will depend upon how the whole connects to you. How Paramhansa Yogananda's Devi connected to him. How his God connects to him, how his Krishna connects to him and offers him whatever it is that he needs. So it is dependent on the whole. Discernment, Viveka, is only ours, it's individual phenomena. Therefore, it has many boundaries. It can be limited. Logic is always limited, but trust can be boundless. That's why it's been called that discernment is like a drop, but trust is the ocean itself. Now, discernment is not omniscient. It can never know everything. When you discern, you can make mistakes. You can make mistakes, no? Even in your discernment can go wrong. See, for example, someone cheats you. Now, someone cheats you once, twice, you can start thinking that such kind of people are cheats only. Don't go. These kind of people who come from here, who do this, gurus are cheats. This is all hogwash, whatever they're teaching you. There are people like this now. This kind of discernment means the discernment has failed. Now they are imposing the same idea on everybody. This is a prejudiced mind. Where is the discernment? Discernment means that without prejudice, you can clearly see something. Correct? So discernment can go wrong. Discernment can make mistakes. But when there is trust, there is no question of making mistakes. You know why? Because in trust, there is surrender to the divine. Who is going to make the mistake? Divine. If the divine is going to make the mistake, how can you avoid it in any case? You be with the flow. Do you get that? There is nothing to do. So there is no possibility. You cannot make any mistake. If the divine is making the mistake, you just simply flow with that. That's it. But in discernment, it is all individual, my responsibility. It's all a very ego. There's a very big element of ego in discernment. In trust, there is no ego. All ego drops. It's just tera, tera, tera that we spoke of, that Nanak came into. It's just yours, yours, and yours. Now, so not able to use discernment, that is using discernment in a wrong way. Now, very important thing. If you are not capable of discernment, trust cannot happen. This is beautiful and this is fantastic. So don't think otherwise what will it create? It will create blind faith. Look at Paramhansa Yogananda's own autobiography of a yogi. See, he went through his childhood, he went through many experiences, but he was able to discern, he was able to remember that, this happened, that happened. It was not coming from, parents told something, he had never had any experience and he decided to believe something, right? So this is something which is very beautiful. So we must never undermine the capacity of the intellect. Don't think intellect is something which can be thrown. No, these are all faculties given to the human being and they should be used because senses are powerful. Intellect is such a fantastic capacity. The only thing that we are saying is don't get limited by the intellect. It is not, we are never saying when we are saying that you must trust. That is why people blame or make fun of others saying that, oh, you've just got blind faith. But no, there is the capacity of intellect and discernment that is strong. So building your intellectual capacity is very strong. That is why they say initial steps of yoga are all very logical. The practice of Surya Namaskar, this is what we're trying to build in children. First, we don't talk about these things to children. We talk about this to mature people, to adults. We will not talk all this. To children, you will say, build your intellectual capacity, build that power of discernment, build that power of logic first. First come into that. It is very important because if you have an unstable intellect, just imagine what can happen to you. If your intellect is unstable, then that trust, everything, it's like you see people going cuckoo. They just don't have a foundation to stand on. So intellect gives a very strong foundation. And this discernment is very important in us. Okay. Let's look at this. So logic versus trust. So logic is analytical. Logic is dissecting. Every little thing, it's like, baal ki khal nikalna. Literally, hair-splitting discussions, arguments are all based on logic. So Osho explains this beautifully. He says it's like a light going through prism and then it disperses into 7. Everything breaks. It fragments. This is how logic works. Logic will break. It will fragment. If you get into arguments with your loved ones, it will leave so much bad blood, it will create distaste, it will create unpleasantness in relationship. Why? Because it divides. Do you see that? So logic works like when someone has very piercing eyes and looks at you with those piercing eyes because they want to cut, dissect, understand. This is one way of looking at people or life around you. Everything you will look at with a sense of mistrust. Oh, let me cut, slice, dissect. Oh, what is this? This is rubbish. This spiritual leader is like this one is like this, making judgments, conclusions. This is how logic works. There is another way that you approach life through trust, through the eyes of love. So Osho says, when the eyes of love set upon something, they heal the wounds in that life that the eyes set upon. If you are wounded within and someone looks upon you with love, your wounds will heal. This is how love works, because love joins, it does not fragment. It it does not break anything, it does not divide, it connects. So trust is that. It comes from a place of love. So I think Paramhansa Yogananda's thing is like the best example. Everybody's familiar with it and has read the book, so it's very easy to connect these ideas there. So trust works like this. It's like a magnet. It will bring all the fragments together. It joins everything. A guru is like this. He's a magnet. That's why it's difficult to explain. If you come into an experience of guru, that's why Sadhguru says guru is a phenomena. It's not a person. So if you're talking about a guru and you say, oh, I really like him, he's like this, it's like you're still at the personality state. It's not, that is not the guru. You've not connected into that dimension at all. This personality is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. He will keep changing on his personality depending on what is needed. At least with Sadhguru, you see him in the 1980s, 1990s. Listen to his talk. The face that he has, the way he talks, his tone, everything is very different from what he's doing now, because the requirements could be different. The kind of audience that he's reaching out is different. Persona is irrelevant. I like that Sadhguru who spoke like this. He looked more humble. I don't like this Sadhguru because he seems so egocentric. Yes, there are people who find him very egotistic, the way he talks. But that is just a persona. It is needed for a certain kind of purpose that he's trying to accomplish. That is what happens around trust. Everybody joins, everybody connects. There is no fragmentation, there is no unpleasantness, there is no dissection that is happening. So this is what happens around Krishna. People will just come, they will just, he can, I don't think I need to say anything. The picture speaks for itself.